And we are live. That's great. I'm gonna paste the link here and I will give everyone a minute for you to, if you want to do a tweet or a post. I will do mine now. And we are live. Oh, and I should mute. I'm gonna paste the link here. No, now I've muted the YouTube. Cool. Great. Woo. Welcome everyone. I hope you can see me and hear me okay. So this is the last day of the training sessions for the summit, but it's not going to be over. We will have the actual summit next week. So do check out the website and register for the sessions for next week as well. So we're joined by Tony Richards today to do some Wardley mapping. Tony is one of the veterans of the summit. He spends his personal time and effort every year, a considerable amount. So thank you for doing that for all of us. But if you're new to the summit is a very collaborative non-profit security community. We all profit by teaching each other and collaborating. The sessions in the training sessions and also in the summit sessions are based on participation. So we do expect you to have questions, and we do expect you to challenge our speaker today, Tony, because we all learn from the questions. So don't be shy. You can unmute and ask the question, or you can ask the question in the chat window here or on YouTube. I will be monitoring both of them. Openness, well, yes, we are live on YouTube right now. Everything we say will be recorded and it will be publicly available after the session as well. And respect and diversity. This summit is a very diverse community, and that's how it creates so much value. We wouldn't survive without diversity. And we all need each other, so respect is one of our key values. And OSS 2020 is our hashtag for this year. Share your experience, share the sessions you're interested in, share anything you think about the summit and the sessions you've been with so far. And I will be posting the Slack invite in the chat window in a minute, because the community runs on the Slack. So even the summit finishes, but the conversations do not finish, and they go over all year round on Slack community. Okay, that is me. I'll now hand over to Tony.
Thank you very much, Dana. All right, I shall try and attempt to wrest control. Yeah. Share. Can everyone see that's okay?
Yep.
Excellent. Well, thank you very much for joining me on this this session. We called it Wardley Mapping Intermediate because I'm gonna, and hopefully the people on the call on the session will have at least gone through or seen some of the basic stuff, the basics of making a map, starting with user needs and then working down the value chain to understand the different levels down, and then as realigning those value chain items with regard to evolution. So I'm taking the standpoint that you've already understand that sort of area. Right, let's see if I can get this to cursor on. There we go. Ooh, there we go. He says. Let me just enhance this. Right. So to start with, building. So I'm going to walk through two scenarios here on how to use Wardley mapping and maps in general to understand the situation, the environment, and then you can start making moves or gameplay to get to the objectives that you're looking for. So from this first sort of example I'm going to take you through is building an online application. So effectively using Wardley mapping to understand the situation environment for building an online application when you have no coding skills. So my coding skills are minimal and rusty, granted 15, 20 years ago, yes, I could write HTML straight into Notepad, jolly, but not anymore these days. So I'm going to be just taking you through, the thought process that I used for mapping out when I wanted to build an online application to do some stuff for myself. So, as with all Wardley maps, you start off with the user needs. And for anyone who wants, there's a PDF of this Open Security Summit 2020 map on the Hey Summit page for this session, which you can download. So anyway, cracking on. So yeah, you start with the user.
I will get that link here.
Okay, thanks. So starting with the user need, and in this mechanism, I'm going to start with the user, and then my user requirement here is I want repeatable actions to be easier to do and share, which is fundamentally what the core components of an application, especially an online application. So as part of that, I need to input data and I need to output information. So this is my core bits. So what I've done is I've put them in the middle. I've generally just put them in the middle here. The 4 columns are illustrative. You don't actually have to have the 4 columns like this style. You can just map based on a variety of different evolutionary paths. I've just gotten stuck with a traditional Genesis custom build product and commodity. And in this situation, I'm got just a key down here to give you some information. So these are the 3 components, my user need group, and I've just sort of popped them in the middle because it's just easier to start when you're writing these things out. But I gave it a little bit of thought here. So output is more of a product. I'm not going to create that. The application hopefully will create that. The input data obviously is custom because that's what we're going to input. So once I've got those, I can then start thinking about, okay, well, what do I need as part of my online application? So for inputting data, I need a form. Brilliant. And for outputting information, I need to display it. Obviously, you build forms, you custom build them to what you want, and you build the display to what you want. Now, I've got a certain amount of capability in this area, so that's why I've indicated here that I have capability. So yeah, I can build forms, and I can, to a certain degree, put together mechanisms for displaying it. Remember, all maps are imperfect, and therefore these are liable to change as we go. And so, any of these components may move around. And you sent us an email saying I'm running late. So, for an online application, then we're looking here and go, okay, we're going to need some sort of platform for the main application, which will ingest the forms, and the display will need this platform, a web server or application. You're going to need a database to store the information. So that platform will require the database. And you may or may not have an API for inputting and outputting data as well, depending on if you want to use APIs or webhooks or any other sort of mechanism for interconnecting to third-party apps. Now, in this area, I have no capability, so I've just demarked those. And you don't have to put these indicators here using colors and such like. I do it because it helps me work out and gain greater understanding as I build up the picture. And then for doing additional moves later, and assessments, I can work out, okay, what's this area, what's that area? And it just helps gain understanding better. So again, I've built, put this value chain in here. When you look at things like applications or websites, etc., you custom build them. APIs are a little bit more product these days because you can get bolt-ons, and obviously databases, you know, pretty much off the shelf. You can go AWS, you get an RDS or Dynamo, or go to Azure and grab something there, the SQL, etc. So they're fairly product. So looking at what those elements need. Well, I want it to be online. I don't want to host. I don't have to build servers. I don't want to have to look after a great deal of infrastructure. So I'm going to make sure these are on the cloud. So the database is in the cloud, and preferably the platform or system that I'm building my application on, or the application itself, will be on the cloud as well. Obviously, cloud being high commodity, so we've moved it down into the commodity area. It's pretty much invisible from the user. So again, I've color coded that purple just because it's just a total ubiquitous, just down there on the right. And so we've got the basic construction here of how you'd map out a very simple web platform with database APIs, etc., to build an application an online application for inputting information and displaying information back. Is everyone cool with this? Does this make sense? Any challenges from anyone? Because remember, all maps are imperfect.
I am struggling to find the file, so I'm searching in Slack. Is the file the map template that you created for?
Yeah, it's a PDF blank map template. It's just in the on Hay Summit on the.
It doesn't allow me to access it. I can see it is there, but I couldn't get to it. So I'm now sharing the template.
I think you have to be a registered delegate, I think, to get access to it.
Okay. I'm in admin mode.
Ah,
too much access control.
I didn't create that.
Okay, so, I just shared it to chat.
Okay, thanks. Does anybody any questions? Everyone's happy with the basics there of mapping out and using Wardley mapping to just gain situational awareness and to use the value chain and the evolution.
I mean, I had a specific question, if I may, Tony, which is on the legend. We've got the white dots for capability, the blue for no capability, which wasn't following what the red and the purple were.
So red is just the user needs part.
I've done little.
I just like you can again, it's just demarcating that user requirement, the basic user requirement before you even sort of head into value chain.
Dig into it. Okay, got it.
Yeah. I mean, in this particular case, I've got two user requirements there, which is the input and the output. If you're making a cup of tea, that would be a cup of tea.
Got it. Yeah, makes sense. Thank you.
The purple was just because it was that particular service. It doesn't matter really if I have capability. I'm not building a cloud structure.
Is that because that's the utility you're leveraging?
Yeah, it's hyper utility. I don't have to build it. I don't have to have a huge capability in that area.
Got it.
The ability to use things like AWS and that is even for people with minimal skill sets.
So that means your application focus is the capability and the white and the blue, pretty much.
Yeah, exactly.
Got it.
I'm not even going to attempt to build a cloud. So if everyone's happy, I shall continue. He says, no, wrong way. Right, so this is my my focus of area. So this is where we're heading into sort of probably, well, this is like the more, how to start using the maps. So this is my focus because obviously I've got my user needs. I know the areas I've got capability in, and I know the area where I'm not even going to bother straying in, which is the cloud side. So this is my focus here. And this is the bit that, because I've got no capability, I'm going to outsource, or I'm going to find something or somebody that will do this for me. This, I don't want to have to code to make a platform. I don't have to look after the servers, keep them updated, make sure they've got antivirus, make sure that they're healthy. I don't have to maintain a database. I don't want to have to look there, have a DB admin access and all that sort of thing. So this is the area, this is my focus area that I want to move to the left, as it were. Yeah, I don't want to have to look after this.
That's good.
You're saying you want to move it to the left or to the right? Okay.
Yeah,
Oh, hang on, the slide's been a bit funky. So that's it's more, well, I say to the left, I'm just being sort of precocious there. Basically,
I got you.
yeah, I don't want to have to deal with it. So yeah, what can I do to that? You know, what can I purchase? What can I use that will outsource those particular elements for me? So in this situation, I've looked at a no-code platform. I could have outsourced it to a third-party application development organization, team, something like that. But because I know I can do the forms and displays and stuff, I can build those, you know, I know what I want to input, and I know kind of got an idea of what I want, how to output and stuff. I don't want to have to do all that bit. So rather than, you know, if I had no capability in this area either, then yeah, I would probably just look to outsource that maybe to a third-party organization and pay somebody to do that for me. Because I've got a bit of capability, and it's just this side of life in the box that I want to get rid of, I've gone for a no-code platform or low-code. These are pretty impressive these days. So in that, I am moving these various elements into the commodity space by choosing a no-code platform. Again, still built on cloud, but I don't have to build it. I don't have to maintain it, and it's, you know, a full-on commodity. Hence why that's purple as well. So, having done that move, that's my gameplay. My map changes now. So, the no-code platform itself can produce the APIs, although, you know, I still have no capability. There'll still be, but it makes it a lot easier, and therefore I can do stuff with that with third parties. The cloud is there as ubiquitous. The no-code platform now is ubiquitous commodity. I just purchase what I need. I use what I want. And I don't have to maintain it. I don't have to worry about it, any of that sort of stuff. So all I have to do now is build my forms on the no-code platform and build how it's displayed on the no-code platform. Everything else is inside that, the application structure, the databases, all that aspect, you know, the logins, credentialization, all those elements are all taken care of for me.
I'll do more.
So, also, if you look, the forms have moved slightly across. The less custom built and a bit more in the product space, same with display. Because it's a no-code platform, they have you know, the capability. It's more drag and drop, so I don't have to code the boxing or the displays. I can use drag and drop components. To be honest, not dissimilar to the Hey Summit platform we're using for some of the back end of this summit, where some of the pages in that are literally drag and drop components and things. Makes life very easy. And so that's, you know, a way there of having mapped and understood the situation, gained situational awareness, looked at the problem, identified areas of capability, identified areas where I don't have capability, and areas where I can fully move into the in commodity space. Then made a gameplay to move that or solve the issue there of not having capability in all those areas by moving to a solution or you know, commodity-based product that solves it for me, and getting rid of a lot of headache. So, does anyone any questions on that move there, or how would, you know, or how would you have done it differently?
I mean, what decision is made to invest in a utility as opposed to use that resource to have that capability,
Yeah,
to
for sure.
bring in resource that you know, that those things now become capabilities.
Yeah, exactly. So another way to look at it is also, if I go back one, I could have also done a costing and economic analysis in this. I mean, this was just done on capability, to be perfectly honest. But you can also look at the cost. What's the cost of having the database built on the cloud? What's the cost of either maintaining a platform or developing a platform? What's the cost of the developers involved in all of this? And then you can do a cost analysis of all these components and a cost analysis of using a commoditized platform that does all that for you. Again, so you can do a cost analysis for that and look at the moves there. If this platform was more expensive than doing the rest of this, then it might have been cheaper to maintain this and then use the money you spent on a developer to do it for me. So there are different ways of doing it. I went this route because it both for skill set and economics, it worked out better. Because at the time, this piece, this actual application I built was for a charity project, and therefore it was minimal costs involved, bit of time from my side.
Oh yeah, and I see it now. Sorry, John.
So let me just forward through. So, but you can see how, on this occasion, this is the sort of what the outcome that I decided to go down. Like I say, you can annotate. You could annotate cost functions here and have additional information on each of these nodes about the OPEX or CAPEX. Like I said, if I didn't have capability in these areas, then perhaps this focus box would have been bigger, and therefore, this might have been a part of the problem with additional outsourcing here to a custom built side and then using a developer to help me on that. Or I could have just outsourced the entire component to a third party application development team. So it's not just a case of understanding where capabilities are. You can use it for financial evaluation as part of that discussion as well. The whole point is that it enables you to gain situational awareness and make decisions.
Thank you, Tony. Appreciate that context. So if you move all those non-capabilities into a no-code platform, we've got here we are now. What comes next?
Yeah, I mean, you can. I'm sure. These things are ever progressing. So the next stage, I guess, could be that the no-code platform may have elements that you want to enhance. So, for example, CCS, you want to increase the capability of the CCS files in there. Maybe some JavaScript to do some functions that it doesn't, as a platform, natively have. So you can start plotting those in and understand where those requirements are. So, for example, if I wanted a function, I'm trying to think of one that the platform doesn't have. So, for example, off the top of my head, enhanced input validation, because doing some testing, you noted that open fields and stuff within the platform and forms natively doesn't do any input validation. So therefore, in my user space, in my user needs, I might have another one here, which is input validation on input fields. For that, I'm going to need some JavaScript, which might need a developer. That then says on the platform. You can then start going, well, at this point, and you can build up these other areas, and at some point there may be a thing where you go, what, that no-code platform is not producing or meeting the user needs, and therefore you can restructure it again and look at and remap it and look at what's the next iteration. Remember, these are all, continue to iterate as the situation changes.
Is your goal, your default goal, not to always move your forms and your display to the right into the commodity space to get more usage, gain more market share? Could it be that where it is on the position on this map is where it needs to be long term, and you're focusing on all the things around it? Or is your focus always to kind of move your forms and display to the right to, one, increases usage, and two, open up opportunities for new use cases?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, the display bit could well easily move to the right. If you looked at this from other platforms, for example, say if you took, if I took, I'm trying to think, I did put a map together for this, but I can't remember where I put it. The online shop, merchandise shop for the summit. We looked at, the ability to not wanting to have to produce large amounts of merch pre-done, because obviously if we were on a location site like we have been traditionally, it's fine, we can have some merch there, we can hand it out to people, they can purchase it at the site as part of the summit. In this situation where we're all remote, we can't, or certainly we wouldn't want to necessarily have to warehouse inventory, create inventory, warehouse it, send it out, etc. So, and also we then, we don't have a physical shop, as it were, or booth to hand these things out or transact with people and delegates. So we looked at, well, what are the user needs? Well, we want to provide the opportunity for delegates to get merch, because that creates some value to the summit by creating a small amount of profit that could be, well, it's not profit, but money on the profit on top of the cost of the garment or the object that could be cycled back into the summit for paying towards its costs. So with it, we could look at this. So okay, we need a platform, an online shop, some sort of mechanism for production on demand. So we went through this I mapped through this process and came up with that. Well, the amount of online shops you can get these days are pretty good and are highly interconnected and integrated. So in the end, we went with Shopify because it had a very good integration with a number of on-demand merchandise manufacturers that could do custom merch. So in this situation, on the custom and Genesis bit was designing the merchandise, as in what's going to be printed upon them. So that's logos, etc. That then would feed into the print on demand and platform, which would then was integrated with Shopify. The Shopify system was then embedded, integrated into the Hey Summit site, and then effectively it was all chaining together. So you visit the Hey Summit site, you can go to the merch page. There's the merch. You can click on that, view it, make an order, do payments. Then that goes off to the through APIs to the print on demand service. They print, stock select, print that particular garment, be it a t-shirt, hoodie, cup, etc. Just for that order. They then package it up and then they send it on a case-by-case scenario. So it's all what would have been sort of like custom build it, have the product sent, then we store it in a warehouse, etc., or a location, hand it out or send it in the post, etc. We moved a lot of that centralized product side of life into again the commodity space. I'm trying to think of where I've got the map I did for that. You have to bear with me, and I'll see what I can find. Because I may have it somewhere. It's one of those things, where you did it as part of a thing and then you sort of filed it away. But Let's have a look.
Okay, doesn't matter if you can't find it. Appreciate it.
Yeah. But again, it's another. Oh, here we go. So if I work out how to change the sharing bit.
Yeah, it's quite fun watching your mouse flying around, clicking on the map.
There we go. Can everyone see this now?
Yep.
Yeah, so here you go. Here's the map I did for sorting out the merch shop. So yeah, I want some awesome Summit merch. So first of all, you need an awesome Summit, which, that's what we've got the Open Security Summit for. This is, working through the value chains. I want merch, so merchandise. For merchandise, we need merch production. We need a shop. And we have an online shop. The shop itself needs to be able to take payments. The online shop needs to be able to take online payments. Merch production, we need Summit graphics, we need product storage, we need the products themselves, we need to ship. As you can see, this is sort of moved through the evolution. Shipping obviously is a highly commoditized. Merch production is a product, storage is a product of that, graphics are custom built, so we put that together. Products are, again, these days, they're sort of, although they're in the product section, but things like t-shirts and stuff are basically almost heading into commodity anyway. There we've got a mixture. So we've got inertia caused by COVID, all the lockdowns, etc. So that's blocking us having a physical shop, which blocks us taking payments. It blocks product storage. So how do we move around that? Well, the online shop, which would have been a basic one if we had one, it's moved to an e-commerce platform. With that, we've still got online payments. The e-commerce platform's commoditized. The online payments are commoditized. Merch production then was moved to on-demand production. In this case, we were using Printful or something like that. I can't remember what it's called. Actually, we're using more than one integrated into the e-commerce platform. For the e-commerce platform, we end up going with Shopify. And because the merch production is on demand, all this lot here was wiped out and taken care of because it's now under this service. Obviously, we've still got the graphics that we have to custom build, but it comes all the way over here. Obviously, an awesome Summit is Genesis and Open Security Summit is custom built. So you can see how we then ended up with this by Shopify integrated with Printful, and then integrated into the Hey Summit platform, moved so many of these elements into this commodity space. So it's pretty much hands-free. If you make a purchase on the Open Security Summit's merchandise page on the Hey Summit platform, you go on there, you choose what you want, you make the payment. After that, there's no hands-on from me at all, from the rest of the Summit organizers. It automatically goes through Shopify. They do the payment bit. That's completely through them with their suppliers, be it PayPal or Stripe, etc. They then pass that information through an API to the Printful on-demand production people. They take the graphic that was selected on the product line, so a t-shirt, cup, whatever, what that was selected, they basically manufacture it, and then they post it to you. So other than the setting up and creation of the graphics and setting up some components and stuff within those platforms, the rest of it, the usage of it is hands-free from this. So about as commoditized as you can get, really. So as you can see, like I did for the process I used for looking at building an online application when I didn't have the skill set, to what do we do about selling merch for the summit when it's a completely virtualized summit and we're not going to be seeing people in a physical situation. So you can map that. Right, I need to find my way back. So let me go back to the screen set. Does anyone have any questions on that? I know I rattled through the merch one there quite quickly, but does anyone have any questions on that?
No, my one question was not a mapping question, so I'll hold off for now.
Oh, go for it, go for it. We've got
I
time.
was just going to say, does that printful have an app inside Shopify or using an API to API like Zapier or something like that?
Yeah, it's an app within Shopify actually. To be honest, I found Printful first, and then they were like, "Oh, this is integrated to
Okay, cool.
Shopify," and I went to Shopify, and yeah, you can upload it. So actually, then that expanded out. So the Shopify for the Open Security Summit merch pages has an application built within it, which is the Printful for doing the on-demand. And it's got another app in there, which is with Tpod, I think, which I went with Printful because it has production facilities both in Europe and the US, and it would use whatever production facility is the closest to the destination, so reducing carbon footprint and things like that, and travel time. But I think there's a aluminium water bottle in the shop, and that's fulfilled by Tpod or whoever they're called, which again is another app and print on demand organization. They're based in France for doing that. And the third app in there is a custom bit as well, which not custom bit, but another application which allows for anybody who wants to purchase ODF or PowerPoint versions of the Wardley maps for actually being able to manipulate and use. They're on the shop as well, and that bolt-in application again provides a mechanism for providing files on demand as opposed to physical merchandise, software and files based within the shop. So again, it's all geared now. So once you do a little bit of setup, as you might expect, and then the rest of it's all running as pure commodity. Let's move on to another slides. So let's walk through another map, which is a bit more pertinent to topics of the summit, and that's using Wardley mapping to understand the situation environment for analysing cyber threats and areas to which to defend and protect. So I did this for a government organisation a couple of years back, and effectively what I'd been asked was, how can we put together a strategy for cyber defence, and understand areas of concern or focus, etc. So I said, well, okay, rather than thinking of the I and the me, let's take it slightly differently to understand and do a bit effectively what was almost threat modeling. So I said, well, let's start with what the attacker wants to do. So the user need here is the attackers. So, okay, from the attacker's user needs, you've got two ways to attack. You've got direct and indirect. So with the direct, you've got things like DDoS, vulnerability exploits, etc. And with the indirect, you've got things like phishing, waterhole attacks, viruses and worms, etc. The reason I've categorized them into direct and indirect is that direct obviously is you're directly attacking, you're using tools to or systems to directly attack, whereas the indirect, you're using a third-party mechanism, not a third party, but you're using something that may or may not work. You're using something that once set on its path, as it were, it is, you can argue, luck of the draw. Does the phishing attack work or not? Really, however well you craft it, may or may not get through. A watering hole, etc. People may or may not get to it. So that's why I call them indirect. Again, like I said, all maps are imperfect, and people may challenge or disagree with those terms, but that's just what I happened to use at the time. And with this, I also then place them in the evolutionary scale. So obviously, DDoS these days is highly commoditized. To a certain degree, product exploitation is almost a product heading into commodity as well. On the indirect side, you know, to a certain degree, somebody's still got to write and you know, custom build almost, but certainly, you know, a virus and worm is quite complex code. Water holes and phishing is a bit more custom built, but I think, you know, we can all agree actually these days they're heading well over into the product space. But like I said, this was originally developed. I originally put this together a couple of years back. I say a couple of years. It's been about 3 years actually, not 2. So some of these, you know, I could sit there and probably actually change a lot of these based on the current situations in the world. So I looked at, okay, well, you know, let's put in the infrastructure as well. Let's have a look at what else is there that's on this side. So in this situation, okay, well, you know, virus worms and all this sort of indirect structures, you know, effectively it's malware. And they may or may not, you know, they're geared or designed to affect user devices, networks, applications, IoT, etc. And then I put in some of the underlying stuff here of these, you know, what does an end user device need? Software, a device, etc., a network to connect to. What does an application need? Well, it has to be developed, it requires more software, it sits on the server, etc. So I just filled these bits in to give some context to, you know, what the infrastructure is. That's why these are in white, and I've kept the attacking side, as it were, in black. Again, the position and some of the structure, you know, people, I guess, you know, people can challenge me on. That's fine and dandy. Like I said, this is 3 years old. I would probably, I would challenge myself on half of this now if I was perfectly honest. I could quite happily sit there and rearrange a lot of this stuff now. Does anybody have any questions at this point, or opinions? Please do. So.
There's a question about, will we get a copy of the slides, which is yes, you will.
Yes. Yeah, these are all under you know, Creative Commons.
Mm-hmm. They will be posted on the website. It's a site. Let me just copy paste the link.
Thank you, DJ.
I just found the point of it. Right. I'll move on then. So again, I filled these in a bit here. So I think, so I've just done, oh yeah. So now I'm concentrating on the water hole. So looking at the water hole attacks, yeah, a browser is needed. For a successful water hole, the browser is needed, which is based on the user device, etc. Water hole is also, you know, reliant upon it, the malware being constructed. Looking at the phishing, you know, that's reliant upon an email, which again, it's reliant upon end user devices, software, blah. And it's also itself, you know, reliant on malware. This is why I put them all like the, you know, water hole attacks, phishing attacks, and virus attacks, all under indirect, because they ultimately, at the end of the day, they're all malware derivatives. So moving over into the direct space. So, you know, a direct attack using a vulnerability exploit, you know, that, you know, requires an exploit within the software or the application. Then moving further, we've got, sorry, just checking my slides here. With the DDoS attack, obviously, you know, you're attacking, well, you need a network to attack using DDoS. And, you know, ideally you're attacking an application or some other component as well. So I constructed all that, and then I decided, well, let's look at some focus of interest from the defending side now. So the focuses for the defending side, I looked at here as, you know, the applications and software, etc. here, which are areas of attack. You know, these are the areas that we would have to look at for defending, and also on the sort of user side, as it were, looking at end user devices and the email and browsers, etc. This is the other focus area. Between these two focus areas, yes, okay, you could argue I've left out networks, etc. there. I haven't included server in that because ultimately, at the end of the day, yes, you do get vulnerabilities, obviously, within operating system stuff, but that's still just software at the end of the day. Please, for the purpose of this, you know, we don't want to delve down into, you know, physical servers or components, etc. I've also excluded network for the moment because fundamentally that's just transfer interconnections with, you know, transfers. And although you can overload networks, except using DDoS and things like that, and other mechanisms, at the end of the day, most attacks are not actually on the network itself. It's, you know, it's on what's on the end of the network. So I just brought, you know, for brevity's sake, I just boiled it down into these two focused areas. We could look at, you know, either providing mitigations or controls or defenses in. So the first thing I wanted to look at was, well, what can we test and remediate? So, you know, from looking at, you know, obviously doing vulnerability testing, penetration testing, you know, functional testing. These areas are like the key areas. And yes, you can look at testing the end user devices and those systems, but, you know, email and browsers, to be honest, if they're ubiquitous, as long as you keep them up to date, etc. You know, there's not much you can do with them. However, on the, you know, the application software, etc. side, you know, these are the areas where you really get the most value from doing the testing and then remediating any issues found to a certain degree. So does anyone want to challenge in this bit so far? Any questions? Please do speak. This is, you know, everyone learns from each other.
Exactly.
It can't always be me. There's got to be somebody else to have a conversation with Tony here.
Well, if you've got a question, Luke, please go for it.
No, I'm good. This is getting a bit out of my depth on the security side of things.
I am interested in how you progress through this. It's very fascinating because it allows you to actually highlight areas that are focused on and, you know, needed for protection on both sides. That's pretty cool. So I'm just kind of listening, seeing where you go from there.
Yeah. Okay, cool, thanks. Yeah, and it's just a thought process. So sort of work your way through and going, okay, well, if I plot this, oh, hello, what can we do here? So the next stage I looked at was, okay, well, what can we make more resilient? You know, we're testing remediation, that's fixing things. However, you know, whether an application or a network device, etc., is fully patched and that, you can still overwhelm. I mean, that's the whole point of massive DDoS. It's not that it's hitting a vulnerability, it's the fact that you're overloading the capacity of something. So we want to make things resilient. So in this situation, well, we can make networks more resilient through increasing bandwidth, making sure that the network devices are capable of handling stuff, maybe even putting in you know, load balancers, DDoS protection, etc. When it comes to applications, again, it's, you know, designing the architecture there to be able to, you know, again, using resilient architecture, making sure that databases, you know, maybe either doubled up or, you know, in a modern cloud structure these days that you've got replications into different areas. And that sort of counts for the server side, you know, move that properly over here, you know, cloud, etc. making an end user device more resilient. Well, you can do things like ensure that users don't have any local file storage. If everything's stored rather than locally on a cloud structure, then therefore you might then go put another node over here and call it storage, file storage, and then tag that to the end user device. So this is an area we can look at for making more resilient. So again, putting antivirus in there, making sure that files are not stored locally, so that if you lose the device or something occurs, so ransomware, and it just knocks out your device, then you've got all, it doesn't actually stop you. You're resilient, the data's elsewhere, or copies of the data elsewhere. And then the last area I looked at was the focus is capability. So that's enhancing the capability of the developers to make the applications and software more secure. Moving development into things like DevSecOps. That push left, as it were. Got a t-shirt there. Push left. Around making applications, making software, making code more secure, more resilient, etc. So increasing their capability. Also, I've also tagged email here because this is effectively looking at email, and certainly at the time I did this, the organization involved was had email servers. It was they had to maintain it, they had to look after it, etc. So that, I looked at, well, we can increase the capability of the email, and to that extent, and I haven't done it on this particular thing, but I know now this organization basically moved to Office 365, and therefore the email system, rather than having their own servers and having to make sure that the antivirus was up to date and the signatures are up to date, by moving it into a commoditized area over here, they've removed a lot of the issues. Right, so, he's gone. So does anybody have any questions, challenges, or opinions on the areas that I've looked at there?
Actually, it was making me think about the presentations that we had on ISGs and Glasswall, how they're working on that project. I was looking at,
so for prime example there for Glasswall is here. Part of this, this area of constraint here. Yes, you can move email over here, and for like using browsers for uploading or downloading files. This is where this is their attack point by moving some of this, cutting some of these areas, these attack ways by using the Glasswall applications and services to move it over here.
I was also thinking about how the way that you're mapping this would actually be useful for what we were looking at there, and I'm not sure why we didn't do that immediately. But yeah, because you added different layers to this that otherwise may not have been obvious, but it should be. Like, this makes sense, and the points where here in the center where everything is attacking, those points, when they're highlighted by more, or when they're pointed to by more of the tools from the attackers, are the things that end up being focused on, here. I mean, it literally, that kind of mapping setup would work for something like determining how something would pass through different ingests into, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah. That's the joy. Again, if I was to revisit this now, and certainly with that same organization that I did it for, some of the stuff would be over on the right now. Some of the dependencies would be different. So some of the areas of focus would be different. I think the initial attack vectors are probably still in the same place, although phishing and well, some of it have moved to the right. Phishing certainly now a commodity. Things like viruses and worms are less custom built, more product space. So a lot of this, even from the attacker side, is moving to the right. And some of the components that and things to view and understand will be to the right, and some of the solutions and mitigations will have moved stuff to the right as well. So I could well happily probably review this if I have some spare time and update it for the current world, as it were, as most organisations are. Especially now, I think the lockdown and that has propelled a lot more organisations to shift stuff into the cloud, both from an enterprise and production, using things like email, browsers, online productivity. So, for example, I very rarely I don't store anything on my local laptop. Where I'm using like Google email, Google Apps, etc. It's all just in the cloud, even the storage. So I'm using by moving everything into that commodity space, even Word and presentational document programs. It makes it more resilient. It means I can't, if I lose a local thing, if I get a virus by accident, there's a lot more protections that I can rely on. Still, you've got to do stuff that yourself. But by moving everything more into that right space, it makes it a lot easier. And yeah, like I said, I should actually revisit this. I will at some point, and sort of update it. I think with the next generational bit. Maybe the next step from this piece is looking at where to go next. But rolling back around, the reason I wanted to walk you all through these two scenarios, and I ended up doing the third one, and I should probably include that as well, was to show what's next. So you've done the basic mapping, and this is why I call it an intermediate tree, is that next step of using the maps to gain social awareness, that you can then start making gameplays. You can start using that information to make changes. Another way to do it is also as if you've got inertia that's built up, stopping some of these elements from moving to the right. So, example, IoT is probably still stuck here to a certain degree. There's a lot of inertia. You could start looking at what's below IoT. So that'd be like custom code. It'll be legacy equipment, etc. And if you can't move this piece, this node to the right, of evolution, what you can do is you can look at the nodes below it. And if you can move the nodes below it to the right, that'll then by default drag the nodes above it to the right a small amount. So it's just a case of, the purpose here was to look at how you can use the maps once you've got your basic maps in place, how you can start looking at them to solve your issues. So that's changed now, isn't it? I was going to say, does anyone have any questions, opinions, comments? Quite happy to revisit some of the maps.
No, I'm excited to see, how you leverage, how you read a map that's been established and how you use that to, make good decisions. How that information allows you to, drive organizational change, make better decisions, etc., etc. So, it's the value. How do we apply what we can see on the map and turn it into a value add for our organization?
Yeah, exactly. And this is how, and it's from that, the first map, putting the map together is the situational awareness. Then, like you say, you can start then using that to drive where you want to go, how to solve that issue. And remember, maps iterative as well. So I haven't updated that particular last one, but you can reiterate it, go back, look at it, reiterate it again. What's the next stage then that you can start making calls on? And then, later on, reiterate it, go back to it, reiterate it again as well. So keep iterating them and making new versions and increasing that awareness, making any changes that have occurred so that you can then gain greater awareness of what's the next steps that potentially you could look at. I think ultimately at the end of the day, you want to kind of Well, it depends on your viewpoint. You could argue from a consumer side of life, you want to try and drive everything into the right as much as possible. From a producer, you want to drive some bits into the right, but some other bits you may want to maintain in the Genesis or the custom space, because that's where you make money, depending on what you're doing. But sometimes you can actually make some calls you can use by driving things to the right. So, for example, I mean, in the end, it didn't really pan out because there was a lack of focus in some other aspects as well. But I developed a very quick process for assuring government systems and services. It was based on a challenge that I had, that with everything moving to such a commoditized and industrialized mechanism, so using cloud services, etc., to reduce the cost and increase the speed of doing the security assurance around organizations rely on for those services, rather than being it's long-winded and expensive. And I developed a process, but obviously, and it implemented it with a couple of government organizations, and it was going well. And I thought, you know what, the speed of adoption is quite slow, although the people who adopt it love it. So then I thought, well, what can we do to increase adoption and to get past the challenge of where others, organizations, and other vendors, etc., are creating inertia because they've got their own versions, or they're quite happy doing the long-winded, expensive, long ways of doing it. So I open sourced the approach. I published it. So effectively, I took it from the custom spot. So I took it from the custom spot where I built it, and I just pushed it over here by making it open source, Creative Commons, publishing it, etc. The idea that then more organizations would want to adopt it because it's free, and therefore other vendors and stuff would have to start using it, and therefore, although I wouldn't make any money on the or revenue on the approach and the intellectual property, as it were, on that, the monetization could come through things like training services around it, training of other organizations on its use, licensing, etc. So there's a whole load of other subclasses below it that you could look at. And another way to look at it, a similar sort of thing, I guess you could argue, was when Simon Wardley got them to effectively make Ubuntu open source and free. So they went from a 5% market share of cloud operating systems to something like a 70% share because they just gave it away. Now, the idea was because you didn't need the monetization on the actual software itself, you created monetization on support services, which happened, which is the way to go when you move your market share. But all of that is through understanding the situation, mapping it, understanding the situation, and then looking at what gameplay can be done to progress.
Complete random thoughts. Did you have more content to go through, Tony, or can I ask a random question?
No. Please ask. That's my content is done.
I mean, it's not fully structured, but I remember when I was first introduced to mapping about 6 or so months ago. I had a conversation very briefly. It was like day one of what is mapping with an ex-colleague, and I talked about how the idea is if you've got a bunch of things, you might want to look at leveraging commodities and utilities, to take that off your plate because it's available, it's scalable, it's there for you, and then focus on your kind of core competencies for whatever that product is. And he talked about a situation which I'm not sure how this fits on a map, but where Netflix, as they were growing, they decided to move their data to a commodity, to AWS, right? Because data center, cloud, AWS, it was utility. So they moved everything to a utility. But later on, as they grew in scale and they learned enough about their own internal systems and data flow and user requirements, etc., they almost went back to custom built. They built their own data centers because they could do it better than that utility once they'd learned enough and they'd grown enough. And it almost felt like they then did a reverse. They switched, an element on their map from a utility to their own custom build. Can you see how that, how that fits onto a map in any way or form?
Yeah, so again, it's all that understanding. So, for example, when I was saying about the next iterations of this particular slide, when I'm at this stage, is that, well, what happens if there's features that this won't do that I want?
Yeah,
I may have to look to go back to this because of other aspects. Granted, some of these components will still be over here just through evolution, but I may, some of the user needs up here, maybe new user needs that are over, and then what they rely on is here, and therefore it's got, I've got to revisit it, and that's why you should always, iterative, yeah. I mean, Netflix is still heavy AWS users.
Yeah.
A prime example, I think, another example of that is Salesforce. So Salesforce still have their own data centers and stuff like that. However, when they've been opening up in new territories, so when they opened up new territories in Canada and Australia, they didn't want to have to go there, build new data centers that open up those new territories. So they used AWS. So they built on the AWS in those territories because it was a quick and easy build out. And then basically what they do is they wait until they get to a certain size where it becomes more efficient than to build their own data centers.
Got it.
Yeah, so Luke, by the way, Luke, meet Tony. Luke, I'm not sure if that person was mentioned was me or somebody else.
No, it was somebody else.
Cool. But in that example, I think what you want to think about is the fact that Netflix had built a bunch of stuff on top of, Netflix built a bunch of things on custom build on top of AWS infrastructure. And there's a moment where almost you commoditize what that is so much because you have so much expertise that actually using your own, when you commoditize that bit too, right, then you can actually move faster. So the reality is that they commoditize also the AWS functionality. So when they decide to choose, there was just choosing between which commodity to use. So they got to the point where provisioning machines was as internally as in AWS. And then you get to choose.
Yeah, it's commoditized.
Yeah. And then you might realize that actually, because look, there's a really cool example that I think Simon covered in a couple of cases where I think on his blog, where sometimes the commodity is worse, right, than the product. And usually the product guys complain and they think, oh, we good because the customs are never going to go for the commodity because it doesn't have that feature and this feature or this quality or that quality. But the reality is that the convenience of the commodity is so greater than the consumer changes sometimes its own requirements, like music quality, right? Tony, do you have that thing about the music thing where you know that?
It's a case of in the music industry, if you look at the music, from ease of use, people, the music has moved from CDs and tapes and things and now streaming services. So, Spotify. But with Spotify, yes, it's nice and easy. It's dead easy to use. It's on demand. It's a total commodity. You don't have to, you only have a small subscription to pay and you get access to all these different things. But what you then suffer from is a reduction in quality of the music. So, it's using MP3 or it's using other broken down, things. So you now got this, whilst a lot of people are happy with that trade-off by having lower quality, but for ease of use, you've now got this secondary class of music consumers, the audiophiles, as it were, which has driven a increase, an uptick in vinyl, because vinyl has the full range of music. There's sounds in vinyl that you as a human can't hear, but apparently, audiophiles like it. So therefore, you've now got this dual use where over in the custom product, short runs of vinyl, or not, although technically products, it's almost in the custom space. where they spend a lot of money on these very specific products, and they've got the latest gear that can do the full wave sound motion. So you've got that small group of people who want that, or almost custom product space. Whereas opposed, there's a load of another group of consumers who are more than happy in that hyper commodity sort of Spotify space. So you get this sort of split, and like I say, the music industry has now seen that.
And then the musicians too, right? And you had that example, I think, with your brother, your mate, that they're spending so much money with music studios. And actually, I was seeing this documentary, and Billie Eilish recorded their entire album, right? In Logic Audio, right? In her bedroom, right?
Yeah. So I did a map for my brother, who's a musician, and he was saying to me, they spend all this money doing, making these tracks, and they make bugger all money on it. And I was like, well, that's because everyone's consuming it through Spotify services, or they're just not using purchasing CDs, and if you do or even purchasing MP3s and things like that, it's all dropped off. And I said, well, you look at that, you're making no money on that. You only make returns on things like vinyl and merch and stuff. I said, what you should do is then actually refactor what you're producing, the music you're producing, and when you make a track that you've recorded, I said, that's now ending up in a low quality version for consumption. I said, you've got to treat that now as a marketing. So recorded music now, it should be marketing. The reason why is you're getting people into your music, using it as a marketing tool, a sales tool, because you actually make money on selling merchandise and playing live. Yeah.
I just realized, that strategy worked really well until COVID, right?
Well, yeah. Now it's just on-demand merch. I've already gone through that map. And my brother's band does have on-demand. That's where I got Printful from. But yeah, I said so. So what you've got to think of it as the recorded music. So the sales of on MP3s, the sales of or pushing it through streaming services, is to get people interested in music, so that when you have a live gig, they will pay money to go to the live gig, and when they're at the live gig, they will buy merchandise. And this is where you make your money. I said, if you really want to save money, stop spending vast amounts on production equipment, on studios, on very expensive producers, because that all adds money in cost, and then you're not making any money on the output of those recordings. So I said, just do it in your bedroom. Just remember, at the end of the day, somebody's listening to this on a compressed file or a streaming service where the quality is not great. So don't spend shitloads of money having hyper quality tracks when the person consuming it is through either a crappy phone or some other mechanism that's not brilliant.
And did you communicate that whole message to him via a map?
Yes, I did. I have a map. God knows where I put the map. And
look, vinyl is an interesting thing, right? Vinyl is something that went from a commodity almost to custom build, like Polaroid, right?
It disappeared almost.
It disappeared, right? So it doesn't mean that yes, things do go like right to left, so left to right most of the time, but sometimes because of technology choices or commercial choices, right, or market forces, they will push it back, right? And that's kind of what happens, right? On like vinyl is a good example, right? And if you look at Polaroid, it's an even better one, right? For a while, you could buy Polaroid very cheaply, right? Kind of comparatively, because the production was so great. Now, once that market dried up, Polaroid almost becomes a custom build kind of product.
Here you go.
And a lot more expensive, but sometimes it comes around in circles, right? Because there's value on what you provide. Yeah, this is what's really cool about this map too, is also look at how Tony used the metadata much more effectively, which I think is really cool.
I added in here the metadata of cost, growth, how it's moving and stuff like that. And so I said, okay, so you've got music, you've got recorded music, live music, festivals, composed music. This is the artist over here. And then you've got this bit here for recorded music. You've got all this high cost custom stuff of studios, production talent, etc. But then the recorded music either goes into physical modes MIDI, which is low revenue and is dying badly, or goes to internet distribution, so it's web stores, again, low cost, or videos, streaming audio, streaming services. So there's faffle revenue in this space, but there's low revenue in this space, but uber high cost here. I said, well, get rid of that bit. Just make the recorded music for this audience here, and use it as marketing material. Because where do you want to make your money? Over here, where you're doing the live music, the merch, etc. I said, reduce that quality of recorded stuff, because people won't notice it's a freaking stream or an MP3. I explained all this to him. He then pointed out that as musicians, they're all artists. And as artists, they want to make it the best thing possible. So they want multiple layers, and it's in a studio. And
sounds like gold-plate engineering.
Yeah. Nothing artists. They want to make it as good as possible. It's like, yes, and this is why you're skint. This is why, and some friends of my brother who I know, one of the guys that's a friend of ours, his band was supporting Muse on stadium tours around Europe. Yet he still, when he wasn't touring, worked behind the bar in a pub because he gets bugger all money. So even on those giant stadium tours, it's only the headliners who make the cash. The support acts make baffle.
Yeah.
And again, they're spending vast amounts on recorded products and stuff like that.
Yeah, and if you understand this, right, then you see, where things move, right? But you also can see here that some of these things, for example, the internet distribution will evolve to the right. So you will, looking at this map, you see the rise of Spotify, right? In fact, I still find insane how for example, if you look at Disney, who only recently got into online streaming, right? They should have done that 5 years ago, right? In fact, Netflix, if you look at Netflix, they've been making such an amazing set of good moves because they've been predicting almost where the market is going to go. Right?
I wrote this about 3 years ago. So I drew this about 3 or 4 years ago. So a lot of this is probably has moved again to the right. Yeah, this section is now it's still there, but it's like you say, it's now vinyl, which is now probably coming off this bit. Whereas a lot of this stuff now, say the internet distribution, who does it through websites and stuff like and things like that anymore? We don't. That's gone. So it's just streaming services here, which are now over in the highly commoditized space and stuff.
Yeah.
So Dennis, do you think Netflix has a team of people doing Wardley mapping internally, or they've got some other form of establishing situational awareness and landscape and direction and predictions?
Well, if they're not mapping, they clearly can do maps, right?
Yeah.
Because look, if you look at the Netflix moves, right? So Netflix started with Postal. They were one of the first ones to move into online distribution, to do rentals. Then they did the move into streaming, which was a massive move, right? So they saw it coming. And then they made the move to content. Remember that they had a huge amount of, they took them out of heat when they started the content, right? Yeah. But if Netflix didn't have original content, they could now be destroyed by Disney, ABC, Apple, and all those guys, because they would completely dry Netflix of content.
And I think what they've done with content as well is it's just good enough. It's not super, super, super high production like some other content producers, but it's pretty good. It's good enough. It keeps people entertained.
It's getting better.
Getting better, yeah.
Yeah, but they invest a lot of money, right? But also, like, they innovate, right? They put them all, now we take it for granted, but Netflix, when they put all the episodes online, again, a lot of people complain, that's not how it works. You don't do that. You don't put 5 things online at the same time, right?
Yeah, you do.
But that's predicting. And so what Netflix, I think, is, but AWS is the best player, right? And Simon just mentioned AWS things in maps, right? Although it would be good to see from there, but I've heard it mentioned a couple of times, right? But if you look at AWS is the best player, right? Because they keep moving things to the right. They keep commoditizing things, and all they have to do is pay attention to what people do in their network and then commoditize that.
Right. I'm just going to share. I don't know if you. There you go. Oh no, it's the wrong one. Yeah.
I love the fact you're using Open Security Summits from the last year. It shows that the power of distributing them or making them available, right?
Oh,
Because
that
then
one
we
that
know where to find it.
where is it? I'm just trying to work out the well, this is the one I wanted to show. I don't know if you saw, Dennis, when I went through.
No. Oh, no, I didn't. Sorry.
How I worked out
Oh, yeah.
the merch shop for this summit.
Yeah.
Because, you know, awesome summit, merchandise, needed production, then COVID-19 basically created inertia on all these things.
Yeah.
So the way we moved that was on-demand production using e-commerce platforms, integrating it all, and pretty much pushed the entire thing into this commodity space. So I was explaining that now if somebody buys some Open Security Summit 2020 merch off the page on the Hey Summit site, that's it's all automated in the back end. Shopify takes the order, does the payment system using PayPal or Sprint, Stripe. That all works. Then it sends, connected into the Printiful on-demand system. That then they then go into their facilities depending on where the buyer is. So because they've got facilities in both the US and Europe. So depending on which facility is closest, they then push it to that. The facility then creates that single or single product. If somebody's ordered, say, a T-shirt, then they package it and then they ship it. So other than the setup, after that, there's pretty much it's all hands off from the summit's point of view. The rest of it is all now integrated and fully commoditized. Yeah,
that's a great example, right? And that suddenly becomes a lot more effective, right? And then it's when you look at the resources we spent on this, right? Then it becomes we leverage that. But it could be a situation where if suddenly we start to sell tons of merchandise, we might decide that we might bring that in house because the profit here also goes. There's now the thing that I feel we don't do enough is the whole profit and kind of financial flows, right?
Yeah. So,
but even that will allow you to make a decision. It might be tempting to say, oh, we're giving all this money to these third parties, but actually it might be so expensive. It might not make any sense to bring that in house, right? Because it's too expensive.
Yeah, so that was one of the ones here I showed about making the jump from building an application. I can do forms, I can do displays. I can't do the platform's APIs, databases. It's built on cloud. So this is the bit I want to shift by outsourcing. I can either outsource somebody to build it for me, or I can, on this particular thing I was doing for charity, so minimize the cost. I looked at a no-code platform, but I said, you can do the economic calculations on these components and then do a comparison against what the economics are here. In this situation, it was a mixture of economics and capability, hence why I've got the color coding, and I went with that direction.
Yep.
But there's a point where this probably has constraints on user needs for certain functions, where it may come back again to this because of So that was something I talked through earlier as well.
Cool. Nice, is good stuff. So you're going to join the sessions next week with Simon, yeah? We got a number of good sessions next week.
Yeah. Although I noticed that the maps in the real world has been cancelled.
Well, it cancelled with the other one. It clashed with the one that Mario had. So, but we got that one because we still have the one on Tuesday on how I do it, right? And you're there, right?
Yeah.
So. Yeah, the schedule's looking
and
pretty cool.
I'll be bringing up some of these ones, like this one and the shop one and stuff like that.
Yeah, so I added one today, but which I think is going to be also really cool is the Wardley maps for the COVID Safe Path application. So if you could pop in that one, because I've been helping with those guys last week, right? And there's some really cool stuff that they're doing from a privacy. So I think it would be really cool to do some maps with them and to see how they do that. And I also want to bring questions to Simon. And I feel that this is our opportunity to pick the guy's brain, right? So I want to do some prep this weekend on going, hey, here are maps I have, or here's the things that I've collected, or questions we have on these maps. Is especially with things like Doctrine and climatic patterns, right? It'd be good to go and pick his brain and going, hey, what do you think of this?
Yeah, and obviously you caught the back end of me talking through our old favourite, the
there you go,
cyber attacks, and I explained the process, how I got to that. Although again, like I said, if I was, I should really revisit this and update it. It's been a couple of years.
Yeah, but that's the problem with these maps. Like they still work of art, right? We really need to have a way to capture this in a dynamic way so they can evolve.
Yeah, and I was making that was one of the points I was making through the session, is that maps are iterative. We should be revisiting them time and time again to look at what can we make the change.
Yeah.
I was thinking about what it would take to automate, to actually make it so machines, so systems could actually make their own Wardley maps that we could take and interpret based on information that they had internally. It was kind of an interesting exercise to look at that.
Well, but that's kind of, to be honest, like that's where we need to evolve to, right? We need to evolve to, like, a lot of the data in maps should actually come from real sources, right? And as long as you have a formula for why is something at the place where it is, then you can start to have maps that actually have data that is fed from other sources.
Yeah, and I was thinking about to do that. I don't want to mess up Simon's model that actually allows human freedom of thought and understanding, and remaking the maps in different ways and that kind of process that is part of this. But I was also thinking that a similar thing could be useful, like we were saying, coming from the actual data and bringing it into reality. But also, I think it could aid in learning and machine learning, or for a neural network. I think that would be something that would be interesting to see if we could implement in that process.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, some of the aspects you could look at and where certainly machine learning could help, I guess, is if you've done quite a lot of extensive mapping through your organization for different areas, you could then use machine learning to do an analysis of all the different maps to identify common areas and things like that, and where things are being repeated or where they could be simplified.
But then also, in a sense, that would not only be it's setting up the way to teach them, I guess, so that they can be able to derive the things themselves. For a lot of these things, I really do like where the adversarial networks are going. I think that they're rather useful, and just being able to feed them, being able to feed them actual samples is awesome, but it's kind of difficult from a data perspective with the actual maps that we're currently using. We'd have to adapt it a little bit to give them real samples, but it's a very interesting concept, because otherwise, I mean, they'd be learning our artistic mistakes as well,
Yeah, and the difference of opinion of where you place a node.
Well, but I really like one, I think it was Chris, what's his name? The guy from Leading Edge Forum, on the session that he did earlier. He actually was showing different maps, and he actually did a really cool thing where he showed this really scribbled map, and just to prove that not every map ends like this. But also, I like the idea that there's different types of maps, that some are designed just to be, almost created dynamically to explain something. Others are designed to prove a point or to make a level of understanding. Others designed to show specific strategies, and others, I think, are designed to show a specific set of data sets, right? So if you look at data that we can generate automatically, I think maps, right? The big epiphany for me was when I realized that I'm always being into graphs, but actually graph is just a very, is a very low cousin of the maps, because there's lots of context that is missing. So if you take even a threat model or an attack tree or a sequence of data points, and as soon as you map it in this kind of evolutions, level, you have so much more value from that map. And if you look at the examples, like for example, the example before where you have all the little metadata bits with the money and the settings and the difficult, whatever, the cost base, it shows you the power of the maps, because you can really, convey a lot of information in a way that you can consume a lot.
Yeah, each node is, you can pile in as much metadata as you want to help you understand or to create greater value in the situational awareness, be that economic cost, be it manpower, be it capability. So for example, let me go back to this one. That's my, the color coding in here is user needs, and this is where I have capability. The blue is where I have no capability, and the purple was total commoditization where I don't need capability. So even that bit of metadata helps inform my decisions when I'm analyzing and looking at gameplay.
Yeah, I guess the rest of what I was thinking about it probably wouldn't make sense to try to explain right now. It's more on the system level, how any of it could be implemented, and in which ways so just that kind of thing.
Well, all maps are imperfect, and there's always room for evolution.
Paul, Tony, have you found a way to visualize doctrine and climatic patterns in the maps?
I'm still working on that. On the gameplay and stuff I can do, moving things to the right, moving nodes that are lower down the map to affect nodes further up the map. I've got inertia. Some of these are using Doctrine to help do it.
I wonder if we could use this system.
Sorry, go, Wally.
I was just thinking, I wonder if we could use a system of regex, like to be able to do that kind of thing. Like this sort of thing should be in this kind of position, and each thing would have to be identified in accordance with its category. But I don't know.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't draw the map straight on the spreadsheet like this. I love a whiteboard. I tend to scribble on a whiteboard first and move things around a lot, and then I put them onto a PowerPoint or something, and then tidy it up.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, the online tools are starting to be good, right? I did that experiment of using Jira, so I did this proof of concept which worked quite well, where I used Jira. So each ticket in Jira was a point in the map, and then I used the Jira state, the workflow states, so you could actually drag and drop it in Jira, and then you just export that data, and then and then use Jira links to say this connects to that one, connects to that one, connects to that one, and then you could actually visualize it programmatically. And that kind of worked. Just needs needs some more open source contributions.
Anyway, any questions from anyone else? I don't think I saw any more.
I think that's all from me. Thank you, Tony.
Chats. Anything else in chat? Yeah, well, slides will be up. Feel free if anyone wants to play with those maps and update them, then please do. But on the proviso that you share them back with the community.
Exactly.
But I'd like to thank you all very much for attending this session, and I hope it's helped explain some of the next sort of what you can do with maps post doing that first basic map, and then the sort of things you can do, use those initial maps to then do the next sets of gameplays.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you very much.
Thanks for doing the sessions. I think I'm not controlling the recording, but I think
Dida's got that.
Yeah, cool.
I will stop the live stream now.